Hey guys, I just want to say really quickly that everything in this video is based on my personal experience and things that I have happened to me personally, but I don't think there's any super official information about file corruption and MDT files out there, so take everything I say with a little bit of grain of salt, but again, this is my experience, things that have happened to me, and I'm just passing that on to you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm talking about everybody's worst nightmare, which is going to be SD card corruption. Specifically with Panasonic cameras, you get that MDT file. Sometimes there's some footage there that you can recover. Sometimes it's just like 0 kilobytes, sorry, you're nothing even really saved. But we're not talking about how to recover it today or anything like that, but just some things that I've run into over the years with the occasional few corruptions I've got or other people shooting for me have got, and why I believe that's happened. So these might not be all super common reasons, but to get some best practices out of the way, I just wanted to go over a few things. So like the number one thing I can recommend that's gonna really cut down on this unfortunate issue for people is if you just popped your card in, formatted it right away, I think most issues with any of these MDT files kind of would go away. Now, I know this is kind of probably pretty obvious for a lot of people, but I know some people kind of like leave stuff on cards for a really, really long time, pop it in their computer, offload a wedding, put it back in the camera, shoot another wedding, bing, bang, boom, you're good to go. Now, it's probably fine, but formatting in the camera every time, making sure it's set for that particular camera's specific requirements for recording video is definitely recommended. So the next one would be kind of related to the first one, but that would be switching between modes or like system frequencies a lot while recording on the same SD card. So you record a bunch of MOV or a bunch of MP4 and kind of are mixing them back and forth for whatever reason, or potentially even switching system frequencies, I think could lead to some issues down the line, especially the more and more you record onto a single card. So if you can at all, I would also avoid that if I could. So this next one kind of relates to the whole like not formatting the card thing, but if you own multiple Panasonic cameras, you really could, record a whole day of footage on the GH6, pop that card out and put it in the GH4, hit record, and it'll go. I just wouldn't recommend it because the protocols on those cameras are slightly different, and moving from one camera to another, some of the few corruptions I've got have been on cards where when I looked at it, there was footage from the GH5, the GH4, the S5, there's like 3 different cameras footages on there. And even though it recorded fine and looked like it was working, there was some corrupt files at the end of the day. And yeah, again, just format your cards in your camera. It's the same tip, but I'm trying to peel back the layers on one of the reasons why you would want to do that. I also would try to avoid using cheaper cards, I just don't understand why people insist on buying like a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 camera and then going to Walmart and buying knockoff, SanDisk cards that are not real. Also, why can Walmart sell those? They are not even they don't even fit in an SD card slot. And anyway, I'd also avoid some brands. Like I know Lexar has kind of fallen out of favor. I used their cards for years and never really got any corruptions, but I used the old style of cards. Apparently some of the new cards have some of the higher failure rates among cards. So, do your own research on the brands, but Angelbird, SanDisk, some of these companies have pretty strong reputations as long as you get the actual SanDisk cards. I still can't believe Walmart was allowed to sell me that card. Like what? How does a fake SanDisk card end up in Walmart? It's so weird. So don't buy cards from Walmart, just avoid Walmart. But yeah, use an SD card appropriate for the caliber of camera and the importance of footage you're shooting. Because if you're going to a wedding with like a $10 SD card from like 20 years ago, don't do that.
And to be honest, it doesn't even necessarily matter the
quality or price or anything like that of your SD cards. Some cameras just generally take specific requirements. So personally, I like to go to the user manual of whatever camera I'm researching. I type in, GB for gigabytes, and there's always a section in Panasonic cameras called memory cards that can be used. So for the GH6, for example, we see here that the CF Express Type B slot should be a 64 to 512 gigabyte card, and the SD card should be a maximum 256 gigabyte card. And then below that, we have a few more specs and things. But, if you're getting corrupt files and you're using like a 4 terabyte CF Express card or like a 512 gigabyte SD card, I'm not saying that those are necessarily going to guarantee you having corrupt files, but, going outside the manufacturer's recommendation for SD cards and CF Express cards or SSDs for cameras that are capable is one way that you're kind of riding the lightning when it comes to corrupt files. So I would look into the operating instructions and user manuals and do a deep dive on what cards are recommended. This is a really specific one, and it's one that I think everyone should consider. So this happened to me on a wedding day, and it was using the dual recording on some of these cameras. Now, of course, you want to have good SD cards and really similar, if not identical, SD cards when possible when you're going to do the backup recording, the dual recording, where an identical file is on both cards. And, shooting on backup recording is the best way to prevent an SD card failure in the first place, because SD cards do fail regardless of their quality, regardless of any of the other tips we've talked about. But the one thing I noticed was when you go into your playback and you start deleting files, they only get deleted off of one card. And then you've got two cards that have different amounts of files, that have different amounts of storage. Some are deleted, some are not. And in general, I find that, that can lead to some more MDT files and some corrupt files. Luckily, on that wedding day, it didn't really cause any issues. The clips I lost were not that big of a deal. It was just like getting ready stuff, and I had enough footage to cover that time of the day. So yeah, if you're backup recording, I would try to avoid deleting clips off of either of the SD cards when you're shooting on the day in camera. Just leave them on your card and delete them when you get home, or just don't use them. And I think the one everybody probably knows about is using the battery grips on like the GH5 or GH5 Mark II or the S5 or something like that. And what happens there is when you have a battery in the battery grip and you eject it, without that battery being 100% dead and the battery switching over to the internal battery, the camera loses power, the file corrupts. So wait for that battery to be 100% dead. You're definitely on the internal battery, which is indicated by no little BG under the battery indicator, and you're good to go. Now, the other thing you have to be careful about is if you hot insert a new battery. What happened to me one time was I inserted the battery, it got 90% of the way there, touched the contacts, switched to that battery, and then the spring popped it back out, and my footage got corrupted. Now, I was able to recover it, but you got to use paid software, and even then, I didn't get everything back. So yeah, you definitely want to be very careful when using those battery grips, but they are very handy if you know how to use them.
I also kind of wanted to dispel what I consider to be kind of a myth, which is if your battery dies, like the internal battery, that you're going to lose your footage. And that could be true in some cases. So I use the official Panasonic battery, like this one, the Lumix one. This is the BLK22 or whatever. This is a higher capacity than the original ZH5. But I also use the Wasabi version, which has the same contacts, blah, 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 and is also increased capacity. Both of these batteries have died on me during shoots or in the middle of recording, and I've never got a corrupt file. I can't vouch for any other battery types or any other models. So from my experience, these two batteries are rock solid for capacity, for not corrupting your footage if your camera dies. So just like SD cards, don't cheap out. I mean, Panasonic will recommend you only use their battery, of course. And if you can afford to, that's great. I have a whole video on these Wasabis and their capacity, things like that. So check that out if you want to. But yeah, just be careful with the batteries you use and don't cheap out. This one is for those of you out there that are just a little bit anxious to swap batteries in the heat of the moment or switch memory cards or whatever. And just keep in mind that even when you shut down the camera, it's still getting power. And if it still has to write a file or whatever, popping that memory card out too early or switching batteries too quickly could cause some bad things to happen in terms of corrupting those files, because essentially the files kind of start writing, have some kind of temporary file, and it has to be put into a container that is readable by your camera, readable by computers. And if that process isn't finished, that's one of the ways that your files can get corrupted. So slow down, take your time. I know some cameras will have a little red light on the inside that is flashing or solid when the memory card is still writing. So just keep an eye on that kind of stuff and, take your time, slow down. It's going to be okay. So I'm sure a lot of people aren't going to love this solution, but on my GH6 at least, I'm not sure which cameras have this feature and which don't, but it has the ability. He has the ability. So on my GH6, I know a lot of people aren't going to love this because old cameras used to do this and you couldn't prevent it, but if you have a really long form video like a wedding or an event and you're really worried about file corruption, some of these Panasonic cameras do have the ability to have segmented files in like 3, 5, 10 minutes or something like that. And that could be one good way that if you're really paranoid, even with, good SD cards, good memory, good batteries, backup recording, if you're still worried that there's going to be some issue, if you set it on those increments then only really that last increment could be messed up. So if you have 10-minute sections and you record an hour and a half, at worst, that last 10 minutes is going to be bad, and you've got an hour and 20 minutes of really solid footage. So that's one option to consider if you've got something that's like really important and a bit longer format. But if you are shooting shorter clips, then the rest of this video is what you're going to want to do. All right, guys. Thanks for putting up with all the iPhone clips. I just kept thinking of new stuff to say in the video, and I wanted to get it done. So, it's not Panasonic quality or anything, but hey, it'll do a pinch. So thanks for stopping by. Let me know and everybody else know in the comments if you have any other ways that you can prevent file corruptions or MDT files or anything like that on your Panasonic cameras. And I do appreciate you guys interacting in the comments. It's really fun to see the discussions going on. Anyway, guys, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.